That is kind of the point of this conversation today.
I'm going to say that out loud. Hi, this is WGSN-DB, Going Solo Network, radio, TV, and podcast #1 internet singles talk network. This is Let's Talk Dating with Christine and Barry. Hi, Barry.
Hi, Christine.
We were laughing about the subject today because the subject today is relationship building. And like last week, it's for all sorts of relationships, not just romantic, friends, family, colleagues. So it's relationship building and how to encourage talking, which normally is not a problem. But I'm going to say for men in general, sometimes it's hard to get a word in edgewise, right?
I have had that experience very recently, in fact.
You tell. Please share. When I stop talking, you can tell your story.
Oh no, I think we'll say that one for another time. Well, you know,
Okay.
but okay. Let me frame it this way, just for the sake of protecting the guilty. This is not primarily a romantic relationship. This is just like in conversation in general. It is true oftentimes that men are less verbal than women are, and oftentimes when women are talking to each other, a man can't get a word in edgeways. That's just the way life is. Just to be transparent. So that's one scenario right there, which is an issue. But I think we're going to speak mostly, though, in our conversation today, we'll see, is primarily one-on-one, and primarily between members of the opposite sex, just because that's going to make it easier to define, because a lot of people listen to our talks. Yeah. Because we talk about relationships, romantic relationships, but it's true in business and social relationships too.
Yeah. And it made me think about, at one point, I had 2 female roommates, and I'm still friends with them. And one of them at that moment had a boyfriend. And she and I were talking, we started out talking about, we were going to have this party and who was going to do what and who was going to pay for what. And then we ended up with, well, what are you going to wear? And what do you think they're going to wear? And do you really want to invite them? And maybe they'll have a problem with who comes. And, they have a dietary constraint. And then we got back to the money. And her boyfriend said, "Excuse me, I counted 10 subjects in your one conversation. Can I tell you how impossible it was to follow?" And I said, yeah.
Yeah.
I said, think of it kind of like a tree. We go up the trunk. We do start at and then we go on all these branches, and we go, and often, not always, we'll come back to the trunk. But it's really hard on guys. And I was so pleased that he said it out loud.
That is one of the biggest differences, is the fact is that when women tend to converse with women, and also when they're talking to men, they oftentimes think that the other person is going to understand the way they're talking, which is not true when talking to men usually. And when women are talking, it tends to be a connect the dots. It's like it's this long sequence of different things that are linked together, all tied together in different ways, different forms, and everything else. When men talk, generally speaking, it's one thing, but one point, one answer, and very solution driven. So the difference in communication styles is entertaining on this level, but frankly, can be very diversive or divisive is a better word, between couples, which a lot of times couples have challenges communication, because when a woman's asking a man questions and his answers don't match the style and duration that hers would, she feels not heard or not listened to. So this can be very disruptive in relationships too. So as much as we're having fun, and we will have fun along the way too, I want to make sure you understand this has some serious implications as well for healthy relationships.
Serious consequences for both sides. Because often I hear, individually and with couples, they both equally don't feel heard. They both equally don't feel listened to. They both equally don't think the other person's appreciating what they have to say. And they're like, and it's so valuable. I go, I know. When you don't say it in the way that the other person can listen and hear, it's going to be really frustrating for both of you. And because we talk generally for such different reasons, I thought I could start out telling something that I've told this a lot, and it seems to be really helpful for men and women to go, oh yeah, I can relate to the one side, and oh, I didn't know about the other side. So typically I start with you lovely men, And please tell me if I'm off base. I think men generally talk for 3 reasons. 1, to share the news. Did you see the sports score? Did you see that on the news? What somebody did as a speech? Short, sweet, click, feedback, sure. The second thing is you've been working on something, a project or a promotion, and you fixed it. You did it. If you succeeded, you accomplished, and you want to share because it's exciting. And if it's somebody that's important to you, you want them to go, wow, yay, good job. The third reason men generally talk is you've got a problem. You've really thought about it. You've worked on it in the back of your head. You've puzzled it out. You've done some research. You really can't find the answer on your own. And men are so good about going, I don't know the answer. I'm going to ask a professional. I'm going to ask an expert. So you ask him, you ask the expert, and then you expect the minute that you finish asking your question, that the person's going to start right in with the short, concise answer to your question. Does that sound like what you've heard before? And how you feel maybe a little?
I wouldn't say any different from that. The thing I will say though is that expectation that the man has is because he's basically got only allocation amount of time and space in his head for the answer to go with that question. Yeah. So if it's going to take 3 or 4 days, it's like, what do I do with this space I've got allocated for this information? Yeah. Because of the way that men think versus the way women think is different, and the way we communicate because of that is different. So exactly. That's the piece that when Alison Armstrong talks about the Berry report, the idea about how that women are going to talk about everything to do with what happened on the Berry journey to go get them, sort of thing. The idea is that when a woman goes shopping, if a man asks a woman, how was your day? He's going to find out in great detail, much more than he asked for. Oh, yeah. Because when a woman asks a man how his day went, it's usually going to be 1, 2, 3, or 4 words. And that's about it. Maybe one sentence. So the difference in communications, the weight of words or the amount of words that are shared opposite genders is very different, which is what makes communication challenging.
Yes.
So yes, I think what your point is true. That in fact there are only about 3 things that men talk about.
Yeah, and I love that you've refined the points in your very succinct way, as you always do.
I'm a man, of course I'm going to.
Of course you're going to get to the point. So women generally, thank you, Bonnie. She gave us a heart.
Yes.
Women generally talk for 3 reasons. We talk to get out our feelings. If we're happy, if we're sad, if we're mad, we're disappointed, we have feelings, we generally want to talk about them. We want to get them out because we're ready to explode. It's so much pressure. And the more emotion we're feeling, the more words we're going to use.
Right.
Then what we're doing while we're talking, the second reason is we're watching to see how the other person's responding. Are they paying attention? Are they looking around? Are they looking really sympathetic? Are they looking attentive? Are they looking like they're going to ask us a question and interrupt? Or are they really going to go listen to us? So we're scanning how your reaction is. The third thing we're watching is what is our reaction to you and your reaction. We're like an MRI machine. It's weird how so much can go on at once, right? Well, do I like how I feel sitting talking to them? Do I like what how his reactions are? How do I feel about his reactions? First, I'm watching and intellectual, but then I'm going to take them internally. And getting to the point is very far down on the list to us, which is super frustrating to men.
Indeed.
Because of the berry picking, we feel obligated. It's in our nature to share all the minutia details that mean nothing generally to the man, because it's not really part of the point to you, but it's part of what's getting our emotion out. It's what's helping us feel less pressure, helping us feel better. And so when we finish emptying, Alison Armstrong's new word for it is the trash. I watched a couple of videos lately where she says we're emptying the trash. I loved it. We feel better because the pressure's gone. And whoever helped us do that, which most of the time really needs to be our girlfriends because they're ready, willing, and able to receive all these bazillions of words. If it happens to be the man in our life, who knows this technique to listen and just wait until we're done, we're like, oh, you're the person that made me feel better. I like you even more now. You're the one that helped me. And now I want to be even closer to you. So it can really help build the bond. And for men who don't know this, it seems pointless. And for the women that don't know how to teach a man or respect that a man can't do this all the time, and sometimes we have to make our stories shorter, we get frustrated, they get frustrated, and the whole communication does this and finally collapses into the dirt.
And that ends up leading to some usually emotional upsets and discords because there's a whole bunch of assumptions made by either person, both people rather.
Yes.
Because there is this miscommunication. And as has been said so far in this talk, that men and women do communicate differently. The problem with the difference is we think that the other one is wrong.
Yes.
Or that we're wrong. So we end up getting upset. Versus the simple fact is, it's different. Okay, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem people, and I'm using people generically because it is about both sides of the conversation, feel upset is because they think because it's different, there's something wrong with it. And it's like, no, that's the whole point. Difference is what makes it so much fun. But as you said, which is key, is that for most women, oftentimes for them to share what's going on, it's good to find their girlfriends to talk to versus the man they're with for his sanity.
Yes.
And for us men to stretch into the place where we can actually hold the space for a woman to share with us, it definitely provides benefits to us if we do that. So it's definitely a thing. However, there's an upper limit to how much we can do that easily, just to be transparent. So to have that experience, you know.
Yes. And to not interrupt like I keep doing. I'm so sorry. I'm the one that knows better.
Exactly. See, right there, perfectly demonstrated.
Oh, thank you. I did it on purpose to demonstrate to the audience. Because we get really excited and we want to jump in. And even if we want to say, wow, yeah, you really understand, don't interrupt. Interrupting, I'm going to say nobody likes getting interrupted. We don't like getting interrupted. You don't like getting interrupted. And both sides can get very excited and have something really important to share. It's going to fall on much more receptive ears, Christine, if you wait. You wait and let them finish their thought. They've emptied what they have to say. And then you go, I have another point. I'd like to make another point.
Here's some keys about that. If you interrupt a man when he's talking, the challenge is that the interruption becomes a distraction that pulls us out of our words. The thing about men is that we are much more, as we talked about many times before, we are more linear, more sequential. And so when we talk, we tend to stick to one point at a time. And if we're in the middle of that point and you interrupt us with something that knocks us off track, it's almost like we can't find our way back to where we started from. So it isn't helpful for us to be able to complete that communication if you do that.
Yeah.
If we, as a man, interrupt a woman who's talking, it's even more upsetting because she basically has got an avalanche coming out. And we're trying to stop the avalanche. It's not pretty.
No. Oh, my. I have so many examples.
Yeah.
So one of the things that is very difficult about interrupting is it's really impolite. It's dismissive. Even though, because I've gotten the even though personally and from clients, even if you're going to say something nice, even like I was going to appreciate Bear, wait till he's done. Then say all the appreciation you want, Christine.
Right. Now,
to give an example of that in real life.
So for myself, though, that's the thing I discovered in a minute with all men, but certainly I feel this, is when and this is a challenge where I've got to hold myself back because the idea of interrupting does come up for me as well, just the same as it is, just for you. The thing for me is that because a woman, as you said earlier, when she's talking about you and your friend talking with the guy who's saying that was 14 things you talked about, there's going to be questions come up for me to ask that I may not be able to keep track of all the way through the conversation. So it's frustrating. It's almost like, can I take notes? Because I can't remember this one and that one and this one at that point, this point. You count on my fingers and use up my fingers trying to remember what do I want to respond to what you said. So wait to the end. I'm like, I can't remember what I was thinking. It's gone too far. Yeah. So there are certain benefits to having a way for the man to track what comes up as questions, responses, answers to what she shared. That can help. So sometimes it could be like, so it's okay on the phone, I guess, or if you're doing it through some other medium where it's not using face-to-face, so you can actually write it down. because frankly, it's really challenging. Otherwise, like trying to keep track in your head of all the things you want to say, because a woman's storytelling and what she talks about can be multifaceted, to say the least.
So I have 2 suggestions that I have actually used in my personal life after the other way didn't work. It's like, well, what do we do that works? So I love to now teach it. So I've told men, bring a pad and a pen, take notes. Oh, he's taking notes. He thinks what I have to say is so important. He's writing it down. I can't speak to 100% of the female population. I like it. All the men that have tried this told me their women liked it. And every time I've told a woman about it, she's like, I'm going to suggest that because that would be really helpful.
Right.
The second thing to do is, my agreement with my husband was, if it's just a story, you have permission to interrupt. Okay. Clarifying a question. If I'm emoting all over the place, don't open your mouth.
No.
Danger, danger, Will Robinson, right?
Right.
That was really helpful. He liked having categories. That was really helpful. He goes, okay, and I'll just, is it this one? Is it this one? So this is a really mad one, and this is the story. I could at least be lucid enough for that most of the time.
Most of the time, yeah.
It's, even coaches, we are personal people with emotions and feelings and too tired and too hungry and all that crap that makes the coach leave the room.
Absolutely.
But these are really helpful suggestions, I think, that certainly not in the heat of the battle, but ahead of time. Wow, in the past, I can't keep up, and I really want to hear what you have to say, and I really want to address it later. So how'd you feel if I took notes? Oh, I'd really like that. Or are there times when I could ask questions in the middle? So for the guy's point of view, that's what you could try asking somebody who you're having a relationship with, intimate with. Practice with your friends. It could be fun with people who already know and like you, and say, I'm trying a new technique. What do you think? And then for the woman to say out loud, I really need to tell you this thing, this story, this problem I'm having. It's a little bit different conversation if it's about the person. Lots of times it's not. And what I did with my husband, there were times I go, I really need to tell you this long story of this thing that happened today. And he'd say, I have like 10 minutes. Bandwidth. I can listen to the rest later. I have 10 minutes right now. Could you give me the high points right now? So we came up after a couple false starts with this agreement of how to do that. So when I'd say, I need the 10-minute one, or I need to tell you a story, he had permission to say, I need the 10-minute one, because we had talked about ahead of time, I'd be okay with 10 minutes. Every once I go, I need 5 minutes more. I just need 5 minutes more. There's 2 more details I have to do. And typically he was okay with it because he knew it was only 5. And I never took advantage of it. I was really good about that. So having if you want to address it ahead of time, great. If you've had problems with it in the past, which most people have, then at a calm time, after dinner and you're both feeling comfortable and happy, boy, there's times when I just am feeling like I'm driving you crazy with all my words, or, wow, I feel like I can't be supportive as your male partner. Somebody initiate this conversation, and I'd really like to suggest something I think that might make it better so that I can be more supportive of you, the other person. Because my new thing I'm telling people is every day you need to get up and say, what could I do today that makes this person in my life have a better day? I want you doing lots of stuff for yourself. And I want you to every day ask, what's one thing? What's one thing? And these conversations are being part of that now, which is kind of exciting that people are using them for this, because trust me, you're going to benefit from it too. Why do I have to do that for them? Well, because it's going to be good for you too. So.
Well, the thing is, we have this artificially and an insane rule system we have for ourselves, where when we talk to each other, we can't use any support systems or anything else that implies somehow we're either weak or we're not respectful or caring or really present with them. And the thing is, like, the idea of making notes, which I want to really emphasize, as you said, it's like, he's making notes. That sounds cool because it means he's respecting and he's really caring. He wants to know what's going on. That's the thing, is we don't actually think that is what's possible. We tend to think, oh no, if I take notes, that implies that I don't know how to think properly and I can't keep present and all that sort of stuff. And there's all the self-flagellation that goes on. So to encourage a better communication method where both partners get to understand each other and have an equal opportunity to communicate in a way that works, I think go for it. Definitely have that much more powerful. So yeah, it's a great thing. So one thing I was going to say.
Oh, go ahead. I thought you were done. So sorry.
No, after you. No, I'm changing subject. So after you.
Okay, so I'm going to just add a little period under that. So one of the things you had brought up at the beginning that I wanted to tie this up in a bow. Often we have big expectations for ourselves and the other person. Yeah. And the thing that trips us up is we think what we do is normal, what everybody does. We just expect the other person to. I was talking to somebody the other day and she said, my boyfriend gets really mad because every day when he comes home from work, he doesn't look happy. And I say, are you happy? Are you mad? And he gets mad because I ask him that. I said, would you like a suggestion of something? This is a lady at the bank. Would you like a suggestion of something else to do? She goes, yeah. I said, when he comes home, and if I don't care how he looks, upset, happy, mad, grow up, wrap your arms around him and give him a big kiss. Whatever happened during the day, he'll be happier. She goes, I said, don't ask him ever again how he's doing. He's upset. She goes,
that is genius. Simple genius.
Don't ask me. She goes, yeah, it just makes it matter. I go, I know. We want to be asked. Of course you want it. You would. So if you want him to ask you every day, tell him it would make you really happy if he asked you every day how your day was or how you're feeling. And then tell him you can do the time limit thing. I said, but never ask him again how he's feeling. He's going to be a happy guy when you never do that again. Yeah. Is that the best period to this thing?
Well, the thing is,
the other person's going to want the same thing.
That's the thing, because as we said many times before, men and women think, talk, and act differently. That's the one thing you need to understand each things. But the other part of that, which I think is really a good idea, is like, because for a lot of men, when they come home from work, they're done with work. They've had enough. They're fighting traffic and all the other stuff. If their woman comes up to them and plants a big smacker on their lips and gives them a big hug, it's probably the best balm to the ache that he had or the pain he had. It's like soothing agent.
Yep.
So I'd say that's a wise idea, because it's totally different. It's a pattern interrupt, really, but what it also is a gift to say, you know what, let the day go, be present now, which is a really good way of doing it. So it's an awesome stuff.
Yes, and what I explained to her is I said, you know how much you want him to listen to how you're feeling and how good that makes you feel? Wrapping your lovely arms around him and giving him a big old passionate, he's going to feel the same good, the same amount of good, I promise. So we want to do this nice thing for our partner. We just want to do it in our way. Doesn't work.
Right.
And then he'll be much more talkative after you've given him a big old romantic kiss.
Indeed. Don't you might feel more relaxed. Oh, yeah. I mean, see, without giving him a beer when he walks in, it's like something that gives him a chance to decompress. Because the thing about that, we talked about this before in previous shows about how men and women decompress differently at the end of the day. And so for a man to be able to decompress without having to talk about it is one of the best things for him. Just to have some peace and quiet, let his mind settle down for him to become present. Whether it's a big kiss or a beer on the TV, something that lets him just have a time to just simply move out of the day and into the present moment. So definitely a smart move.
Oh, yes. And if he drinks beer, get him a beer afterwards and let him just sit there. Because then to the next day I said, so what's the next thing? I stand in line, so I'm waiting. And she said, well, I cooked dinner and I want him to do the dishes. I said, oh, have you told him you'd like him to do the dishes? She said, no. I said, well, it's really important to say how happy he would be. I said, and then you know what you go do while he's doing the dishes, and you tell him you're going to go take a bubble bath while he's doing the dishes. And you're going to come out all naked and sweet smelling from the bath. And he's going to have those dishes done so quick.
I like the way you think. That works.
Isn't that nice for men?
Well, part of it also is, again, because you said really up front, the key thing is she assumed something about him without asking him. I mean, any relationship, this is one of the danger signs, is you think the other person is going to be a mind reader. Don't do that. It doesn't work. That's why we said in the title, how to encourage talking, not how to encourage mind reading.
We don't teach mind reading here.
No. That's the advanced class. We don't offer that on the podcast.
Yeah. Pay big bucks for that one.
Oh, yeah.
So now you've seen, if you listen to what I said, men and women talk. They talk for really different reasons. So if you want to get a man to talk, then you need to hear about the news, big news, what's happening in the world. You want to hear, what did he accomplish? He's been working on this project. How's it going?
Mm-hmm.
And don't ask him about the problem. If he needs a solution and he thinks you're an expert, he will ask you in 2 seconds, but then please give him the answer.
Right.
As quickly as possible. Because that means you're a valuable resource if he's asking you how to solve a problem.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I want to drop in as well. This is changing gears slightly because it's about a slightly more subtle thing about communication. Because one of the things about communication we don't necessarily understand each other is because we tend to communicate differently, not just in terms of the way men and women talk differently, but also the way we speak and the way we listen. I'm referencing something that's different, which is neurolinguistic programming. Neurolinguistic programming, for those who don't know, was basically developed in the late 70s, early 80s, and was a modality of, I won't say a subset of psychology that's been used in psychological principles, but it's meant to be a more modern version, meaning what you can do with NLP is profound for how to change people's minds. But one of the components within NLP is the recognition is that we speak and communicate and think differently based upon what our preferences are. Mm-hmm. So we may speak from an auditory place, a kinesthetic place, or a visual place for basic simplicity, meaning that the words we use, for example, if somebody is more visually referenced, they will tend to use visual terms in their language when they're talking. If they are more auditorily connected, they'll use more feeling words in their languaging. So it's auditory, they'll use more sound type words in their languaging. If they're more kinesthetic, they'll use more feeling words. So for example, in a conversation, you talk to somebody like, how are you feeling? It's like, I feel right as rain, which actually is a kinesthetic word. Or you say that, looks really good out there. There's someone say to somebody, what do you think? So I'd say it rings a bell with me. Always, if you listen to the certain words people use, rings a bell, sounds good to me, looks like a good idea, or it feels good to me. Those simple things, the same answer, those terms will tell you basically what that person's modality is, how they generally think. Which means that when you want to communicate with them, this is actually, they use it in sales, but I'm going to use it as a communication technique. Is you understand that somebody has a certain preferential modality of how they tend to say things, speak to them in the language they speak. So for example, if the person is an auditory person, sounds good to me, it rings a bell, again, auditory words. If you speak to them in other words that are visual, they may not really understand what you're saying. As much as they may get the words, they may not get the actual meaning of that. But you speak to them back in that same modality of feeling auditory words, you might discover that they have they'll light up basically. They'll get so resonant because they get that you're on the same language level as them. So this is a thing you use for anybody. This is good for business, for a romantic relationship, for anything, is listen to what they say, but also listen to what words they use when they're saying it, because that can give you a clue what their reference point is. Again, visual, auditory, kinesthetic. And by keeping in reference to what it is, and it won't be all 100% of one or none of the others. It tend to be just a general bias towards one. So when you have that ability to communicate, that's from earlier, I think, that note, is the fact that we then have an ability to communicate more easily, which would be a really useful tool. So add that one to your tool belt.
Thank you, Bonnie, for putting your comment up there. We're glad that you have learned how to talk to men that way, because it makes this conversation go so much more smoothly.
Indeed.
And because you get this from a man's point of view, it's even more valid, I think, even though I get to talk to men all the time in my practice. So one of the things, too, that I have found along with that to pay attention is how many times people use the word thinking and how many times they use the word feeling.
Oh, yeah.
That's where they're often coming from, which I won't say men or women, but I will say masculine, feminine, that often when people are coming from their masculine place, no matter what their gender is, they're often coming more from their heads. And when they're coming more from their feminine place, they're coming more from their feelings. And that's another thing that can happen is when somebody's emoting and the other person wants to be all logical, or when somebody's being really logical and the other person wants to be all ooey gooey about the emotion.
Yeah,
They're really going to run into some short circuits that way.
absolutely. Yeah.
So it's time for a commercial break, and we'll be right back with more ways to encourage communications.
Absolutely. See you in a minute.
Hi, I'm John Thomas. I want to share with you a professional products and services directory we call Going Solo Directory. And you need to check this out. If you want exposure to your business or are seeking professional product or services, this directory has it all. And that membership, for the many special features, you get the benefit of a worldwide exposure with a 40-minute video interview on an international business show showcase. All this for just one low annual fee. For more information, contact GoingSoloDirectory.com.
And we're back.
And we're back. And we're talking about relationship building and how to encourage talking. And we've talked a lot about how men and women, males and females can communicate so differently.
Yeah.
And what we hope with this is that when you hear there's nothing wrong with what you're doing, it just isn't going to always work with the other person. So if you make some adjustments, if your point is to have them listen to you while you're talking and actually say something helpful back, why not say, well, maybe I could do something a little differently than I've been doing if it hasn't been working smoothly?
Yep.
Just a thought.
Just a thought.
A throwaway thought.
One of the what came up also for me is that one of the most challenging or the most dangerous words people use when you ask them how they're feeling is they say they're fine. Because it's a really non-committal and non-descriptive word to use, which doesn't mean really anything. And so oftentimes people use the word fine because they don't want to talk about it. But the thing is, the person asking the question usually does want to talk about it. They want to get more information. So a recommendation, if you're in a relationship with somebody and you want to encourage talking or encourage it with the other person, don't use the word fine unless you're talking about the grade of sandpaper. or how fine you want to grate the cheese, so that's about as fine. That's the only time you want to use fine. So just because that's a dangerous word to use in conversation, because it tends to be a conversation stopper rather than helpful. So one encouragement there.
Well, it's one of the things we encourage, to be honest with yourself and honest with the other person, because if you can't be honest with the other person, maybe it's not the right person to be with. Yeah. You're even allowed to say, I just don't want to talk about it right now.
Mm-hmm.
I could talk about it after dinner. I could talk about it after I sleep on it. I could talk about it in an hour. And to have an agreement with each other that, boy, I know the other person really wants to talk about it right now this minute, because they were just going to explode. If you really want this other person to continue to share with you now and continue in the future, it will be helpful if they give you a timeline, you could wait for the timeline. Go call a friend. Go run around the block. Don't just stuff it. Go do something that will help take the edge off.
Yeah.
And then I know you're going to be there 2 minutes before whatever that time is to be ready to talk about it. And that's the thing that would encourage anybody to talk more.
Mm-hmm.
Because the scary thing is when you get punished for telling the truth, then who wants to tell the truth anymore?
You get scared.
Really hard.
That's the challenge too. Yeah, and that actually brings up another piece, which is recognizing that when you're with somebody, especially when you get to know them, you don't know their history. So you don't know what they've been through in terms of their communication, relationship, conversations, stuff like that in the past. And if, again, we talked earlier about we are different from each other, is go in understanding that's possible. Not necessarily that it's definite, but it's possible. So that way, when the other person doesn't answer the way you expect them to, you won't, first of all, judge it. But secondly, you might be willing to go, okay, so that was different. That wasn't what I expected. I'm not sure what it means. You say, you know what? We haven't talked about it before, and I'm not sure how you feel. So can you explain more what you mean? Because I don't know what it is, and I don't want to really understand what you're asking or saying. That vulnerability on your part becomes encouraging to them to be vulnerable as well. And it's one of the things that I've discovered in relationships and conversations where we're frankly in a culture where it's not cool to be vulnerable. It's not something we tend to dive into. But I think if you're going to have a healthy relationship with anybody, especially a romantic relationship, vulnerability is a requirement. So to create that space of safety with each other, to be able to communicate cleanly and have that, because again, you don't know the history. I know in friendships I've had with people, I've watched them like unfold like a flower because in previous relationships, they were so wounded or so hurt, they shut down. And so their ability to communicate was not so much suppressed, but voided almost. They just didn't have a voice to be heard. So when we were talking and they realized it's like they could actually talk and not be punished, because that's not my style, there was a blossoming that happened where they basically started to come out of that place of resistance, start talking more easily, more comfortably, and light up more when they talk. So there's things we can do for each other by making it a safe place to share, to be heard, to be received. It can be a greatest gift you've ever given anybody. You just don't know. So I do encourage that, recommend that.
Mm-hmm. I like that you said that because so often it's impossible not to make assumptions. It's impossible. Give yourself a break. You're going to have assumptions about how they're feeling, how they're thinking, what their words really meant. Question and confirm. I just want to understand more. This is what I heard. Is that what you meant? Before you jump, before you get all your feelings hurt, before you lash back, please, just take a moment, because it could be, you have every right to be upset about what it is they said. Just get a confirmation before you get upset. I think that's really imperative. And I wanted to touch on one other thing about the interrupting, because nobody likes being interrupted. As I said, it's very impolite. And what men have taught me, which I am so pleased they taught me, that when I ask a question of a man, he really wants to think of the best answer. Mm-hmm. And you might take a little bit to think about it, to come up with the right answer. And what I used to do before I knew better was you wouldn't say anything. So I'd assume, I didn't ask the question in the right way. So I'd ask you the question different. And I'd change the words. And how does that make you feel, Mr. Berry, when I do that?
It's like a reset every single time. I got to start over going, how do I answer this one now? And it is challenging to be on the other end. And it is true. We tend to want to construct the framing, the words, how we want to speak with a little bit of time to do that.
Yeah.
And again, when men and women do speak differently and think differently, the speed of thoughts on them is very different too. So we want to be able to construct it because we like to also be, what's the word for? Not economical is the right word, but we want to be efficient with the words we use. We don't like doing long-winded stories you're telling. Usually, most men don't. So when women love that, we don't necessarily. So we want to build the most impactful answer rather than just saying, fine, we want to at least make it concise. Yeah. And when you change the question on us, it's like all that hard work we put into refining silently in our minds is thrown out the window and go start again.
Yes.
So not only are we going to have to start over, which means we're going to spend more time thinking and not answering, which you're not going to like, but also we may start getting more and more frustrated because it's like, I had an answer for you, and you just cut me off and started again. So does that answer your question?
Yes, and then I get frustrated and I'll interrupt you a third time and change the question a third time. So please don't do that. No. As Alison Armstrong instructs, I love her instructions. You put on the woman, ask your question, put on invisible duct tape, and wait. And sometimes, especially in the beginning, it feels like forever. Mm-hmm. And I just had to remind myself, he really wants to give me the right answer. He really wants me to be happy with his answer. He wants to come up with just the most precise, and so shut up. So that's what I tell myself, and I tell my clients, please shut up. Because he really is going to give you a really good answer. If you keep interrupting, he's going to give up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is and we're going to keep hammering this point home. Understand we don't talk the same. We don't think the same. We think differently. So be willing enough to go, you know what? This is not how I would expect to be responding. So I know it's different, but I'm going to just go with it and see what happens. If you can be that flexible, that willing, boy, the amazing gifts you'll get back for it.
So I'm going to teach one more thing.
Please.
That also men have taught me. Oh, the women who go, oh my God, this is the 47th time he's told this story. Doesn't he know I've already heard it 47 times? Doesn't he think I was paying attention? Doesn't he think I remembered? Oh, and he changed 3 things, and I'm going to interrupt him and explain, no. You wore a red shirt that day. It wasn't blue when you caught that great big fish out in the ocean. And I can do this because I'm a woman, because I know we think we're being really, really, really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
None of that is helpful. Not one little teeny weeny bit. Because remember, he wants to talk about his accomplishments. Because what happens when they talk about their accomplishments, ladies, is the first time it happens, they catch a fish, they won a promotion, their team won. Their bodies feel good. They get a shot of testosterone. Don't you want a really manly man? This is what helps them be manly men.
Mm-hmm.
Then the thing that's really remarkable, the men taught me, and I was like, really? Every time, those 47 times you tell that story, the same thing happens to your body. You get just as excited, just as fired up, just as much testosterone. And I was like, really? Every time? Yeah. And I believe these men that were telling me this. So I tell women, hey, hun, tell that fish story. And go, wow, every time. Because it's making your man more manly. And don't you get to take advantage of that? Oh, boy. So I really want to teach that because I was guilty as charged, confused when they were first telling me, and have watched the benefits of practicing this.
So basically, encouraging talking leads to better sex. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, for both people.
Right. No, but I want to let me get back to the point.
I'm glad you said that because it's the truth.
I could not go there. I had to go there. But the thing, again, back to this point, is real recognition is that there is something that is honoring and really wonderful when we allow each other to be our true selves. Yes, it does create better connection, which will lead to greater intimacy as well. And it is something when you start to learn the differences and the benefits of that, how you can actually lean into it and actually encourage it to create the results that you really do want to have anyway. It's like, why wouldn't you do that? So I love that way of putting it. Just crap me out. It's like, yeah, it leads to better sex.
It does. For both people.
Yes.
Yeah. Because both people are feeling good. Both people are like, wow, I get to feel all manly. And she goes, look what I did. I did that. In your little look at how he's looking. I did that. I mean, really.
Take ownership.
Yourself up about all the benefit that you keep doing for your partner. I mean, if the world spent more time with that instead of being helpful and complaining and criticism, it would be so happier. People would just have a much happier time in their relationships. Don't you agree?
I definitely agree. Absolutely.
So we're teaching it as fast as we can, right, Barry?
Do the best we can. Yes. That's why we do all these shows for that reason.
I'm going to tell one more tweak that I learned from John Gray when I was working with him. We women constantly say, could you do something? And if I say that to another woman, could you take out the trash? Could you pick that stuff up for me? I wouldn't think anything of it. And I've had enough men say, there's a little part of your brain that goes, does she think I can't? Really? I mean, not seriously, but there's just, because you want us to think you're doing your best and you really have thought stuff out and you're really good at stuff. And if I was going to ask you to take out the trash, of course you can. So if I just change that one word to, would you please take out the trash? There's no short circuit of having to, really? Could? Yeah. And then when we say could, and you might even say, which sounds so smart alecky, yeah, I can. And you don't mean it smart alecky. You're wondering why we would even think you couldn't. So
I would
eliminate that word from your vocabulary. Women.
I would like to eliminate that from conversation, period, because that is one of the most challenging things we do is when somebody says, can you do this for me? It's like, the answer is yes. Do you want me to do it for you? That's a different question. And so in conversation, and this is true for men and women, this is actually regardless of the women-male conversation, happens all places too, is when we get into that, when we start to be, how to say this, when we think about conscious language, and this is a key thing for this conscious language, is notice what we say. Well, again, reason why men take time to think what they're going to say is because they're going to frame it right. Because saying can you versus could you, would you, instead of could you, because the thing is the wording, all these words are very similar, but the impact and what they actually mean is very different. So understanding that when we have this challenge to say could you or can you, it's a mechanical thing. Is it possible for that to be done? Yes. That's not the question you actually want to ask. You actually ask them to do it for you. So you say, would you be willing to for me? Thank you. And that's the other part, by the way. Please say thank you.
Yes. And what would it provide for us? Because you're always looking at ways to make us happy and provide for us. So would you take out the trash? Because it would make me really happy.
I'll say absolutely in a heartbeat.
Yeah, in like 3 seconds you would.
Yeah.
And yes, it feels weird to change some of your languaging in the beginning. And yes, you have to actually think about it. If you know, you hear us saying the benefits you will reap, this much effort, this much benefit, every time, guaranteed. Really, this much effort feels kind of weird in the beginning. This is what you're going to get back on both sides. If you take one or all of the things we've suggested today. I love when we talk every week, and when they call me back, they go, it worked. I go, I know. I give great advice. I just see if people take it.
One more piece I want to add to this could and would stuff that comes up.
Yeah.
As I experienced recently with somebody, is when they don't actually ask you directly. This is the other part, by the way, because direct requests are so much more wonderful when you say, like, would you please do this for me? Thank you. Awesome stuff. Great. But when you say the trash needs to be taken out, as if it's like, because my response is going to come out is going to say, it'd be nice if it could take it out itself, So I'm just to say that as a matter of politeness and respect and manners with each other, is when you do ask each other to do things for you, ask for favors, ask for help, use language that makes sense. Ask questions that do have actual answers to them, the answers you want to get. And it's, again, sounds like nuts and bolts, but it will change your relationships.
Yes. Be direct, no subtle, no innuendo, no hints. We women between each other, we get all that. It's a disservice to do that with the men in your life. They prefer just tell me what you need and then say thank you after I do it.
Yeah.
It goes a long ways, right?
It does indeed.
So we say please and thank you when people call us, right?
We do.
Barry and I are very polite.
We've had lots of practice.
Yes. So if you would like to talk to us and we say please and thank you to talk to us, the way that you would get a hold of me is through my website, which is www.theperfectcatch.com, because you learn how to be the perfect catch and then you will attract the perfect catch. You can sign up for my newsletter. You can also request a complimentary conversation with me if you click on What's Holding You Back from Love. You can also reach me on my social media, on Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter and Pinterest at Christine Baumgartner. No, The Perfect Catch. And then at YouTube, it's at Coach Christine Baumgartner. And at Instagram, it's at Christine Baumgartner with no coach as part of it. And then now you get to hear Barry, who's way easier than
That's a lot to figure out. But that's
like accessories. I decided I had to wear accessory this time since I've been talking about my accessories.
Well, that's the thing, is that this is just illustrating how men and women are different. We are simpler, so my information is simpler. It's easier to find me. So if you want to find more about me, you can find me on my website, which is my name, Barry Selby. So barryselby.com is my website. Still in redevelopment, getting it designed done. It's taking a bit of while. It's going to be done soon. But even now, if you go to my website, at the front page, you can sign up for a mini session with me right there, or you can go to the bottom of the screen and join my email list. Very easy to do. Other things on my site will be reappearing soon. Right now, the navigation is missing, so you can't get to the other places on my site. But I do have other good stuff there. In the meantime, though, you can find me on social media. You can also get my book on Amazon. Just released the 10th anniversary edition last week, so you can definitely get my book, which is called 50 Ways to Love Your Lover. That's on Amazon. But social media-wise, my social media is my name, except for Instagram. Instagram is the real Barry Selby. But everywhere else, which is Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, Pinterest, Clubhouse, is all Barry Selby. So follow me, find me, and keep track of all the stuff I'm doing, and definitely keep in touch with both of us.
Yeah. And Bonnie, thank you. She said she's going to change her woods to coulds even at work now. So see, somebody's putting it into practice right now. We love comments.
Coulds to woods, she said.
Coulds to woods. Sorry.
Yeah.
I gave you advice. Yes. Sorry. Yes. She's going to change her coulds to woods. Yes. So she already uses woods. Perfect. So we love comments and questions. So live when you're watching us or when you're watching the replay, send us comments and questions and any new suggestions you want for topics. We love those. And we're always here on Thursday at 1 o'clock Pacific and 4 o'clock Eastern and all the times in between. And you can watch us on Roku and you can listen to us on Apple Spreaker. Now,
Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, all the different places. So the podcast is up too. And you can definitely, if you like to, if you listen to our podcast, just subscribe to our podcast. And if you want to leave a review, we definitely welcome that as well.
Yes. Oh, yes. Please do that. Thank you, Barry, for adding that. Barry always remembers all the details.
I'm learning stuff.
Yes, we're all learning. You know, it's a learning curve for everything.
Mm-hmm.
Good thing we know so much about dating and relationships, though, right?
Indeed. So next week.
Yes, with another scintillating subject.
So thank you for joining us. We'll see you again soon.
Bye for now.
Bye.